Did you have to read it?
No, so I need to read it.
I asked them and they were just like,
Ready?
let's do this.
All right. Twyla has given me the thumbs up that she's ready, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. So the second item on the agenda has to do with any additions or deletions to the agenda. Any comment to the agenda? Otherwise, we would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. President,
Yes,
Dr.
Ms.
Hawker,
Rose.
so moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? All right, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda has to do with review and approve the May 19th minutes. You should have a copy of those in front of you, and when you're ready, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Dr. Harker,
Yes.
in the past, and if I know some minutes come out before, I know I did not see these minutes until tonight. And it's a quick read, obviously, so,
Would
I
you
would-
like some more time?
no, I think I'm good for tonight, but, you know, to be able to sit down and truly digest them, you know, if we could have them even a half day or so ahead of time would be nice.
You bet. Nope, we also have that same challenge, so when you
Yeah.
try to get them done in time, we'll have them, and if not, we'll just wait till next meeting. So that'll be perfect. So what's your pleasure with this set? Certainly fine bringing them back, and we can approve them at that time if you'd like a little more time to read them, or if you think they're okay, we'll entertain a motion.
Why don't we bring them back?
Yeah, that's just great.
No, that's good.
Okay, well, we'll just table the item 3, and we'll bring that back at our next meeting.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, item 4. We have a couple of tentative work agreements, or tentative agreements that were reviewed and discussed and I believe approved at the last meeting. First one had to do with the work day. So let me pass out, just as a reminder, we have those, here are some copies of that language, if you'd like to take one and pass it around. Oh, and I have a couple extras here. Everybody get a copy? Here's a couple more you can send down there.
Mr. Shelby, can I have a copy, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
So as long as the...
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would like to entertain adding one word to it.
Okay.
Teachers are expected to work a 7 3/4 hour shift. I would like to add 7 3/4 hour consecutive shift, or 7 3/4 consecutive hour shift, so that there's no split hours.
Okay.
So it's a consecutive day, you know, rather than, you know, potentially a split day, you know. And I understand, you know, that's minor, but it was one of the concerns that was brought to me.
What's the thoughts of everybody else?
Trying to think of any reason why we wouldn't agree to that.
Yeah, I didn't see any reason why you wouldn't either, but, you know, it's just it's a protection, you know, for the future, you know, that, you know, if there's a schedule change at the high school, for instance, you're gonna work first and second and sixth and seventh.
That makes sense.
So teachers are expected to work a 7 3/4 consecutive hour shift.
Come on, Mrs. Schwartz.
What?
Consecutive has to go before 7 3/4, doesn't it?
I was just gonna say that. That was my suggestion. It would sound, I think it's dramatic.
I'm just a dumb math.
I'm just social
Consecutive
studies.
7 and
Yeah.
7 3/4
Hour
hours
shift.
consecutive.
it would need to be in front of.
I think I need to sit next to Michelle.
Rub off on you.
Okay, so teachers are expected to work a consecutive 7 3/4 hour shift.
Yes.
Okay, everybody's in agreement with that? Okay. Twyla, can you make that change? Okay, great. Then I'm going to kind of put an X on these two that we have here. And we'll have the new and improved here momentarily.
have what you are looking for. I have the actual agreement,
Thank you.
but I can print. You might want to see this.
Does this need to be printed on that fancier paper, Twyla, or we're good with these?
But do they wish to see the new language before signing it?
Well, I guess that's up to them. They saw
Do we
the
need to see
old
it
language
again?
minus the word consecutive in there.
For your records?
For our records, we'd like to have one to consecutive. Thank you. And that way, when we sit down to do the language cleanup also, if we can, I can come sit with you and we can maybe do a little shifting of digital information.
When you come and sit with me,
Well, when we,
He was leaving you out of that.
make it easier, right?
Okay, then I will send those down.
Somebody
on
needs
that.
to watch.
consecutive come before or after?
Okay, that one has been updated. Let's pass out this next one
This
in
one.
regards to.
This was the old one, so, right?
No, that's
I
the new
just
one.
saw the
The new
word
one.
consecutive
Oh, there it
in
is,
there.
yeah.
That's the new one.
She's good. It's been a long day, Mr. Chair.
I think it's been a long month.
What was the meme I saw? The last month of school is 1,637 days long.
I saw that too. That's very true, isn't it? Very true. Okay, next you should be receiving, and if there's an extra copy there, Kent, let's get that to Twyla as well, I guess. Next one has to do with the tentative agreement that was approved for vacancies and transfers. That's the language that's there. Just want to make sure everybody's okay with that, and if so, then I'll send around the document again for that signature. Thank you. And here's that.
Thank you.
What you've already signed, but just for your records. That's the red version of it. So I believe that last one, the focus point there was making sure we added in that for a minimum of 48 hours, the jobs will be posted on there. So you can see that that's been added. Those can, yeah, those are, yep. That's fine.
We've been handing back to Twyla here.
Oh, good, okay. Good. Keep her fed. Okay.
I'm good.
I need you.
I'm good at this.
Everybody okay with this one then? Okay, I will send this one down then as well.
I have a question. So like if I wanted to take like superintendent's discretion instead of discretion, would that have to be done now or can we clean that up later?
I think we can clean that up later,
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
because it doesn't change the
Right.
meaning of the.
Okay, so that wraps up item 4, tentative agreements with the workday and the vacancies and transfers. Item 5, discussion topics for negotiations. Maintenance of standards clause. I'll send out this once again,
We have not heard back yet from our,
okay?
who we sent it to, so
So hold on to that.
please do.
I will be happy to do that. I'm not even gonna pass those out, we'll just save that for next time.
We tried yesterday again to reach out and plan tag.
You betcha.
right.
Then moving down the list, item B, placement on salary schedule. I'm going to pass that out with the discussed change of changing will to may and changing 4 to 10.
We have not discussed this one yet, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, then here
This,
we go.
this one's being
Okay.
introduced.
Perfect.
Thank you very much also for sending that out in advance so we could take a look at it as well.
Gotcha.
And also, on behalf of the DEA, thank you for, providing us the snacks and the light supper as well. We appreciate that.
Great, thanks, Andy.
It's been it's,
Mr. Swartz cooked tonight, so those of you that were stuck in the parking lot didn't get to
You
enjoy it.
ate my piece of pizza or what?
no, it's,
Okay, so this was mailed out in advance for your review, hopefully. And this is just an update there on that placement of salary schedule focused on our vocational certified teachers, where they may be given up to 10 years of experience on the salary schedule, more in line with what other districts are doing. Help us to make sure we can recruit and retain good vocational teachers. So I guess we'd like to have that conversation.
Mr. Chair, placing them at 10 years experience places them in the schedule at BS 16. Because there is no 10-year step on BS 0.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So if you give them 10 years, it automatically bumps them over 2 horizontal lanes.
I think that was unintended,
That
wasn't it?
absolutely was
Right,
intended.
right.
Yeah. And it, I mean,
So the most in the BS column would be 8.
Right. We discussed this in length, and we've talked to our CTE teachers up there, and we discussed, 8 years, and we discussed 6 years and so forth, and the CTE teachers that we talked about said it would be better to go at a 6-year ratio and have a place to advance the next year than to place them at 8 years, and then they're frozen until they move 8. They get 8 credits. Because there is no career increment at anything but the BS 32 and MS 16. So then, the second year, they would receive no increase unless there was an increase in the base.
Okay.
So her,
and that would also, another part of the discussion was give them a couple years to get those credits to move horizontally, instead of, like I said, being at 8 and, I'm here.
trying to explain it to us who are, have gone through the educational system to become a teacher. Is it provisional, if I'm right, the provisional, and they can't take any credits until that provisional has been satisfied? Is that correct, Mr. Smith? So, and that takes 1 to 2 years, right?
At least 1.
So they would not even be eligible to take credits for at least 1 year to make that jump to 8.
Okay. Well, I'm learning lots of new stuff too. I didn't even know that. I thought once you came in on your provisional, you are encouraged to start getting your credentials. You're saying you've got to get that done.
Well, that's what,
Is that correct, Lyle?
What's that?
You've got to, as a teacher coming in the CTE world, that's not already a teacher, you're saying that they've got to complete
Transition
their,
to teaching, which takes a year.
okay, they have to complete that before any of their college credits would count.
Correct.
Okay. Well, again, the intent was never to place them outside the salary schedule or any of that stuff, so I'm good with 6. How about everybody else? Keith,
you have,
Yeah,
you have
I
it.
have no problem. I'm just trying to,
Well,
I'm looking at it right now, too.
is that rule that they cannot count credits while they're on a provisional? Is that in our
No, that's
agreement,
that's
or
gonna
is
be a
that state
That's going to be a
rule?
state rule.
That would have to be a state, because that is not in our agreement.
Does the state rule mandate what we do on our salary schedule?
We can't violate their,
I'm okay with 6. I have no problem with 6. I just,
Okay.
that was
We-
new information, so.
and as on the teaching side, we would really encourage those people to want to go and get their bachelor's, obviously, in teaching. We had discussed, allowing horizontal, I guess, I don't know.
Horizontal movement until, I believe, the BS plus 16, but not allowing more horizontal movement until they have a bachelor's degree.
Or work, allow them to go maybe up to BS 16, and then as they're working on their bachelor's degree, allow those bachelor classes to add for 24 and 32.
Okay.
Because, the first 16 allowing the $50 credits classes, and then really to encourage them to reach for that BS as well.
Right. And in their degree, they would have to be very focused. They would only count for half the points, half the credits anyway, if they're taking them outside of some areas. So that would keep them very focused on getting very specific pedagogy kinds of education courses done.
And I know the other concern is that precedence has been set to not make this retroactive.
Yep, I don't see any problem with that either.
Yeah.
So,
So 6 years. And so those people who are already currently on the system as it is, are CTE teachers right now, as long as they remain in the system, they can continue to do what they're doing right now.
okay. Keith, that makes sense as HR?
I don't have any problem with that.
Okay. Okay, then we'll modify this from the 4, or from the 10 to 6.
Yeah.
And what, okay, so we
And
changed
do
will
we-
to may,
Right, and that's fine.
and you okay with that?
Yeah.
And crossed out the 8,000 hours.
Yeah. And any vertical movement, BS 24 or beyond, requires the bachelor's, or regards work towards in the bachelor's. So it gives them 16, it gives them 2 horizontal lanes to move freely with credits. And I know, and I'm assuming, and I'm pretty naive about it, Mr. Smith, and I know Ms. Laban's back there as well, that I'm assuming some of the classes they're taking are bachelor-type classes in that transitional period as well?
Yes, the transitional teaching classes count towards the CTE education.
In that, is that a bachelor's?
Yes, it will be. Outside of the transitional teaching, you have on average 24 credits, depending on how many general ed credits you bring in.
So that even that 24 credits that you are in your vocation, that right there would push them into the 32 very quickly.
How does that, have you got number 2 in front of you? How does the language that you're proposing coincide with placement on salary schedule subsection 2?
Let me just take a look here real quick here.
I'm not sure that we, because if we're gonna do that, we may have to take a look at that because it's all after granting of the degree. Do you see my concern?
And that would be the transitional license that Lyle was talking about.
Right, but,
So it already addresses that in number 2.
Yeah.
So that one's already up. How would you propose?
I honestly don't know. I almost think we have some discrepancies in the way that it's currently written, because we reference both a baccalaureate degree, bachelor's degree, as well as the CTE endorsements as issued by. And so I almost think as the way it's currently written, there's almost conflict there as to which one we are emphasizing.
Would this make more sense to stop number 2 after granting of the degree, and then make a number 3 that would be specific to vocation?
I think that would make more sense, wouldn't it?
And then vocation, like you say, for vocational teachers, only those credits earned after being fully certified for vocational instruction will be counted, which makes a transitional license. And then all credits after BS plus 16 will be bachelor credits based upon their vocation.
Okay. Because you have access to the expertise in that, can I suggest that you bring back proposed language for that? So that
Absolutely.
we can clean that up? Because I really think that
I
it needs a
will,
revamp.
yeah, I'll sit down this weekend and get it done.
Perfect. I think that would be good. I'd be happy to do it, but I'm not sure you'd be happy with working when we were done.
Yeah, it's supposed to be crappy weather. All right, so that's good. That's fine.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, I think we put this one
Okay,
on
that's
hold
fine.
until we get the more proposed language that cleans this up.
Right, but I think that, overall, there is an agreement that we can do better
Absolutely.
and still protect our first vocation teachers.
I agree.
All right, that sounds great. Okay, let's move on down. Kind of C and D, we've always grouped together a little bit, TFFR and salaries. Our last meeting, we threw out the offer. I guess, where are we standing? Where are you standing?
You want to take that one? You want to take that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
If I can find it.
I'm just gonna
Yeah.
comment. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so with the offer thrown out, I shouldn't say thrown out, but,
Proposed.
Here.
oh, you just want to talk about it? You don't want?
No,
Okay.
we'll just counter offer.
Okay, so we'd like to come with a counter offer. I believe the first offer was 1.5 TFFR, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. We're not, no, we're okay with doing some things with TFFR. I think that's that's a win-win for both. I think everybody understands that. So we'd like to come back with a 6.75% TFFR and a 375 to the base.
And would say that again on the base?
375 to the base.
$375.
Approximately 1% to the
Yep.
base.
$6.75 to TFFR.
Right, and so that I'm clear, the 375 to the base, that updates the current steps? Or that's
No.
on top of the steps?
That is not, that is just an update, from 36,925 to 37,330, which would increase the starting salary of a beginning teacher in our district to slightly over $46,000, which I think is an attractive number for starting teachers.
Okay, but you also still want movement on the current schedule? The steps?
The
Correct.
tenure, the
Yes.
tenure, yes.
Well, not tenure, just even if you're a first-year teacher moving to a second-year
Yeah.
teacher, you want that?
Yes.
So you're
So
asking
you're
for
asking
steps
for-
and lanes and
We've never negotiated steps and lanes before. That's always been
a given.
a given.
So you're asking, so that's 2% for steps, minimum. Teachers on the upper end of that schedule, it's larger than 2. The starting is about 2. So your counter, and the 375 is 1%?
Slightly over 1.
Yeah.
I just like even numbers. That's good.
So the district's offer of 3.5% on the table after our last meeting. That was a 2% movement on the salary schedule. That was allowing steps, which equivalates to 2%, and 1.5 for TFFR for a total of 3.5 versus.
But once again, we've never, as negotiators, considered steps and as part of the negotiation contract. But I mean, it's a new administration, I understand.
Right. Well, again, so to talk apples to apples, that was the 3.5% that we talked last meeting. And your offer today, your counter offer today is the same steps, 1% on the base and 6 3/4 TFFR for a total of 9 3/4.
Well, it would, but aside that, you know, we're at 7. When you consider the cost savings on TFFR, it's actually about a 7%, because again, we don't consider the steps as a part of it. And so I'm that's just that's kind of the veteran status, that's your step for that. So we have never considered that before. So that's why when we did this, that was not on our thought process.
Okay. Well, I guess again, new administration, but it should be on the thought process, because if teachers make movement on the salary schedule, that's at least a 2%, growth increase to their current salaries. So I mean, I don't think we need to even go caucus. There is no way that can ever happen. You're at 9 3/4, and our best offer is 3.5. So I guess we can agree to not settle. I don't know what we're going to do from this point. Maybe we need to bring the whiteboard over and we can go through and talk about all this new money that you think the district has, so that we can identify there's zero hidden pots of money that you may think exist from prior, but this is not even anything for us to go in and caucus and discuss.
Okay.
So where does that put us with the rest of the agenda items?
So are you saying that the 1.5 TFFR, that is it? There's no...
We made you our very best offer. I mean, yeah, we're not here to try to tell you we didn't.
Well, we might want to work on some of the other ones before we come back to this, because it does sound like this is not going to be something that can be resolved. And it was, so I think that we, if you want to, other thing is to be solved in tentative agenda before we turn it over to Dana. I guess that might be what we want to do.
Is that what you guys want to do? Everybody else?
I think we should keep going.
Okay. Well, Okay, let's have a conversation about the safe workplace language.
Since our last meeting, there's been more articles in newspapers regarding safe workplace in schools, particularly in Fargo. And it just has reinforced, again, the need to have some aspect of protection for our students and our staff.
Well, and we are equally as concerned with all of that. I think through this document that was shared with us at your last, or well, maybe even a couple meetings ago, I think the last sentence there kind of sums this up. It references this as this policy would protect all individual students and staff in the classroom. This is best addressed in a policy.
Mr. Chair, can you refer, is it, what's
Your document that you passed
Okay,
out,
all right.
with the last rationale comment.
Okay.
So I know there was some reference to perhaps some policies that were perceived as not existing in the policy book, but they are there, so I'm not sure how that came about, but we have 7 policies already on the book that address this policy need, and I think our board would be more than happy to entertain, modifying and looking at, if there needs to be any updates or changes in any of those existing policies to address that, but to add a clause, to add something like this to an agreement, throughout this item, there's just too many, student right scenarios, due processes for students that have to be taken into account. We've done our best to take a look at this. We've had our council give us guidance on, what can we do and what we can't do. And again, we're back to, certainly are sympathetic and understanding of the concerns that are out there facing school today. But to write a procedure or something in place that guarantees something's not going to happen, I don't know how we can do that. I don't know how that expectation would be expected that could be placed. So we feel that our best avenue is to address this in policy and to maybe spend some time addressing those 7 policies that we have referenced that address those 6 paragraphs in your document.
I know one concern we are, and I'm very glad that FF is still there, because it does mirror the Century Code very, very well. We're very concerned that the FFAR and the FF are so drastically different.
And tell me those policies again, Jim?
The FFAR, which you had said was the administrative regulations, because they are pretty drastically different than FF. It's a lot of maze and a lot of when a school official is unsure of how to appropriately classify a student conduct violation, he shall consult the building principal. Well, if that child is is in a class and is not behaving and is having a tantrum, for lack of a better word, that needs to be addressed immediately, and we really would like to see those teachers protected a little bit, so that an investigation can get done and those teachers can know what's going to happen before that child comes back. We have I don't see it often. I've seen some verbal abuse at the high school. I haven't seen any physical abuse at the high school. But and oftentimes, the verbal abuse comes back and hasn't been, I don't want to say dealt with, but sometimes it's, you don't understand the situation at home, more empathy, things like that. And I just think that sometimes the teachers need to know a little bit more, and I understand FERPA, I understand that, but I think that their teachers deserve a little bit of care. You know, and I think that's sometimes what they don't think they're getting, is when those students come back immediately into their classroom, which is kind of what AR is saying to do.
And I would echo Dr. Hawker. I don't disagree that there's some things that we need to look at, and all of those things. If FFAR needs to be addressed, I don't think anybody would be opposed to addressing it. It would be best to be addressed through policy and tweaking or adding to the regs, rather than addressing it in the agreement. The work agreement would probably be our stance on that. So we're not opposed to having those conversations. We're not opposed to working together to address that through policy. We just believe that would probably be the better avenue rather than within the work contract.
And I'll go right to work and look at FFAR. I didn't look at any admin
Administrative.
regs, any ARs associated with those 7 policies that I identified that are tied to the request.
And we would appreciate
So
that.
Let me do that.
And we do, as teachers, I know we appreciate that there is the tier system coming out for mental health,
Yeah.
but not all of our behavior problems are mental health issues. Some of them are not.
But they're
And
just behavior issues.
yeah, behavior is behavior. So, you know, we're recognizing that you are taking a step in the right direction, but I think, you know, sometimes we need to look, you know, even beyond the mental health aspect of it.
Wouldn't disagree with you.
Agree wholeheartedly there too.
Mr. Chair, can I ask which,
Please.
you said in our safety language, there were some, we were infringing on some student rights. Would you be able to clarify which?
Well, let me share with you these policies.
thank
So if you look at our board policy FG, that ties in with our student rights, and that's, again, those are federal and state laws as well. We just have to, when we remove kids from a class or whatever, and they're entitled to a free and appropriate education, there's a due process procedure that just has to be, has to be followed. So we've referenced that policy. We have our, in fact, I'll just share with you all of the policies that I referenced that I think we could spend some time looking at individually to see if we need to make some improvements in those policies, and then take those to the board for those recommendations and handle that way. That way that's a live living document that can be updated and modified without going through a negotiation agreement. It just goes, to the board. So it's honestly a much easier, cleaner process. So we have policy AAA, that has to do with the overall philosophy of Dickinson schools and education. We have policy ACE, which has to do with violent and threatening behavior. We have policy ACC, which has to do with discrimination and harassment and retaliation procedures. Policy FG, that has to do with student rights and responsibilities. Policy FF, student conduct and discipline. And then policy FFK, suspension and expulsion. And then along that same policy, there is a board reg on that, a BR1, that also talks about suspension and expulsion. So those policies, as we reference those back into the letter, some of those policies are very pertinent to our employees to keep them safe and help there. And some of them are focused on obviously the student and the due process piece. So we just believe that having that addressed through policies, that's just much easier than having it go through negotiations and an agreement every year or two or however often. It can be just more of a live, living, document. And as those that are involved in the mental health task force and those recommendations, I'm confident that there'll be improvements implemented this very next school year. We're going to spend some time this summer putting those resources together, and we're going to start right off with all new hires, and then we'll start right off at the school year with flowing those Tier 1, Tier 2 strategies, which for some veteran teachers that have been around a while, those strategies, that they may very well be very well aware of them because they're not new. We've brought them to the district, but we haven't brought them for a long time, and we've got a lot of new staff, and so I think that's also part of the problem. But I think that can help, and then maybe you guys can spend some time looking through those specific policies. I'd be happy to entertain a committee to go through those. We can do whatever, whatever we need to adjust, we can make those recommendations to our board and have the board handle those kinds of things through policy.
If we were to put something in the negotiated agreement, like the first statement, and then reference policies, which we have done in our negotiated agreement, where reference policy, so that they would know where they can go to look to see what it means to have, what our policy is on our philosophy for safety, what our policy is.
Yeah, we may be able to come to that. I think, let me give you an example, even with number 1. The district shall make a good faith effort. Gosh, do you know how many Supreme Court decisions have come around the argument of what good faith even means? It's just too vague. It just can't be something that it could be argued forever by anybody. We just need more concise. We just need more exact. And that's where we feel like, maybe handling it through policy and getting boards to put in their policies, then also halfway through a school year or halfway through a negotiation cycle or whatever, if something needed to be changed in that policy, it literally takes no more than 2 board meetings to update that policy and make it live and living, rather than having to wait a whole year or 2 through the next negotiation cycle. So it's those kinds of challenges that we need to overcome. We're not opposed. I'm not opposed. I can't speak for the rest of the committee of having, something referencing, safe work. We have those in policy already, and we have to play with those. We have to figure out that wording. And literally, the very first item in there, good faith. I don't know how do I guarantee that we even agree on what good faith means? That we're just not clear enough on that. It needs to be, a little clearer. The second sentence in there seems to be a little more cut and dry with complying with rules and stuff. I get that, but the whole good faith. We know our goal. We have district strategic plans, and even in that policy, AAA for the philosophy of Dickinson school districts, you'll see in there the intent, the goal, obviously, provide a safe environment for our kiddos and for our employees and all of the above. So I can speak for myself, and I certainly 100% support the cause. It's just the verbiage. How do we do that? And we feel like the policy is probably the best avenue to do that, to make it live and be able to be edited throughout a year or whenever things might need to be, changed.
If I could add to that as well. I'm very sympathetic and appreciate what you're saying about adding something to it that references policy. Is probably unnecessary to have it in the work agreement that references policy, because we're bound by policy. We don't need to reference policy if we're already bound by policy. Does that make sense?
However, here's the reason why I think that it's important for us, if it's going to run that way, is that I didn't know AA, ACE, ACC, FG, and FFK were a part of what you guys were. All I saw was the FF, because that's the student discipline. So, and I was smart enough to go to the policies, but a teacher who is sitting in the classroom, who doesn't know, who hasn't been around the block, his or her only lifeline is what we've given them. And they can reference there, okay, what is it? Oh, I see it's this policy. Now I can go find that policy. I understand that, it's a living document, you're bound by it, but it gives them a reference point to at least look themselves. Otherwise, policy can be very overwhelming.
Would it be appropriate to be in the teacher handbook?
It's not.
Maybe what we need to do is make an inclusion in our employee handbook that we distribute to the employees every at the start of every school year, where we reference important policy. And maybe that would be a great place to add those policies to that, so that the teachers would have easy
When you say
reference.
it's not in there, I haven't memorized the handbook either. But
I don't know if it is or isn't, but it's certainly something that we could add to the handbook so that you would have access to those policies.
as an employee.
As an employee, but there's nothing like this.
Okay. Well, let me make a note of that as well. Well, I think that definitely is is a place for us to make improvements. If a veteran teacher doesn't even know really about some of these other policies, we need to do a better job of sharing out those policies and practices, so.
And then make it more, it needs to be the same in all buildings. I mean, we have the
Through
policies.
the admin regs that you're
Yeah.
kind of referencing, maybe that aren't tied as tightly to
Correct.
the FFs.
And the procedures and practices.
I will review that here shortly, and we'll, you betcha.
Are not the same in every building.
Yeah, I would agree. That should be relatively consistent from building to building. That's just best for kids and parents too, as they move from elementary to middle school to high school anyway. So we can certainly look at that as well.
And I understand having it in the teacher handbook and would be a good place to have it. Just to know that, especially the new teachers, they get so much thrown at them at that new teacher in service and orientation, that a lot of times that handbook gets put on a shelf because they're so overwhelmed with all the other training that we provide. And that comes from being a mentor to, over the past 6 years, 2 new teachers that come into our building. They're so overwhelmed that they haven't even really looked at that handbook. But I know they looked at the contract. And they've read the contract. That's just something that they've read and looked through when they get hired on, is the contract. But that handbook tends to not be as valuable of a source. Just something to keep in mind, especially our new teachers, because it's given to them the one day and talked about very briefly and not emphasized at how important that handbook can be.
Okay, that's a good point.
But I can tell you, most of them read their contract.
The agreement.
Yeah, the negotiated agreement.
All right, any further conversation then about the safe workplace language?
Just to clarify here, just understand that it has not been removed, and it is no tentative agreement, so technically it's still a discussion topic for negotiations.
Okay, that sounds good, and I'll try to see if I can even address by next time the AR, but if not, certainly that'll be something I'll do this summer. Okay, let's move on down then. I'm gonna circle that. And let's have a conversation then about the leave language, PTOs, kind of sunset clause, all of the above. Let me, I know some of this.
I believe we need to talk about the PTO, because if we can agree on the PTO, then that would take care of the sunset clause.
Okay, let me pass this out. I believe everybody also got this in an email.
I've got them right here.
You do? Oh,
Yeah.
are you? Oh, I do too.
Okay, well, that's
You're
more
double
for the
prepared.
audience.
You're
double prepared.
Right, so just wanted to make
You
sure.
you just have no idea how prepared you are. Actually, we're trying to
Actually,
comply with
you're too far
the
away.
request from the audience to have, you want to send some of those. I'll just keep them all in file. Couple more for the audience.
It's only 6:30. Probably don't look like though, that's. No, you're right.
sitting around. I've been at it since 5.
It's two-sided.
Yeah,
One of them said-
but let's clean it up.
Got it.
Okay.
All right.
Shoot us down.
Keith, maybe you want to start this conversation, and then, like you said, it's,
You?
there's the PTO conversation, I guess, to just start, and then depending upon that, ties in lots of the other stuff, so.
This is just a quick rough draft to at least start the conversation. I think it's in your interest and our interest both as professionals, and logistically to not have the all of the detail and all of the requirements that surround sick leave and then emergency leave and how many days you can do this, and it's really pretty cumbersome and complicated. So what we would like to do is try to come up with a win-win where we treat you as professionals and not have question the way you use leave and go to just professional time off or PTO. The wording that we are proposing is that we teachers of the DPS will receive a total of 12 days of personal leave per year, accumulative to 185 days. Unused personal leave may be transferred and added to the annual total allocation of 12 days and therefore could exceed the 185-day total. And then we've proposed just basically replacing a lot of language with 3 bullet items there, 3 sections. Unused leave will be reimbursed to the employee at the time of their departure from the district at the rate of $20 per day. Employees who exceed their allocation of personal leave will have 1 day of salary benefits plus the cost of a certified sub deducted from the pay period immediately following the absence. And use of personal leave shall be limited to 5 consecutive contact days unless accompanied by a medical documentation. Unless waived by the superintendent, personal leave shall not be granted for the first or last 5 days of the school year. So just try to take some language, move it up, simplify it into 3 pretty easy statements, and then you'll see from the after that there's a lot of cleaning up, a lot of deleting of unnecessary language that we could have, and most of the other wording changes are either deleting unnecessary or changing sick leave to personal leave and making it common language. I thought that would be a good place to start the conversation.
Well, I appreciate you think it's a win-win, because I don't.
Okay?
And here's why.
Okay?
Number one, we lose a lot. For us currently right now, it's 15 sick and 2 personal if you're under 10 years and 3. So it's automatically 5 or 6 days less. What was the rationale for the accumulation to 185?
Trying to make an incentive. We are always better off if we incentivize having people in the certified teacher in the classroom versus replacing that person with a substitute. And if to reward and incentivize teachers who choose to be in the classroom, we don't want to cap that at 120 and that we would like to give you the opportunity to bank those days so that at the end of your time with the district, we can give you more of a reward or incentive to have those days at the end. So that's one of the places where we were hoping to make that a win-win where, yeah, you're giving up days, but hopefully at the back end, we can reward you for that and we both get something out of that.
The exception, if you take a look at the exception, wouldn't the exception be a moot point? Because why, if you already, any unused personal leave may be transferred, and it's up on top says personal leave will accumulate to 185. So how would the personal leave accumulate beyond 185? And the exception?
If you had 184 days at the start of the year,
Yeah.
and you got your 12 new days that year, you would actually go to probably 196. And so you wouldn't be penalized. You would get all of your, that year's.
That's the way it currently is.
Yes.
But that's not, currently that exception is if I choose not to use a personal day and I wish to add it to my sick leave, I can do so to make it more than 120. But with removal of the sick leave,
We can take that out. I have no problem removing that language.
next, what was the rationale for having, number 2, employees who exceed their allocation of personal leave days will have 1 day of salary benefits plus the cost of a certified sub deducted from the pay period. I understand they deduct. Why the cost of the certified sub?
Because it's the cost to the district. Being gone is not free to the district.
Absolutely.
We still have to pay to that certified sub. So the day deduct, that's just a recognition of the cost that the district does occur when somebody.
So
uses a
you're
day
actually,
deduct.
you're actually having them pay for the sub,
Yes.
so you're making money. There's no cost.
We're breaking even.
No, there's no cost because you're not paying the teacher.
Well, in all honesty, that is not unusual or out of the ordinary in the business.
It sure is here.
Okay. It,
It almost sounds as a, I know you're seeing it as an incentive to stay in the classroom, but we see it as a punishment.
okay. And this is just simply a recognition of the cost that is associated that come with, day deducts are not free. Day deducts do cost the district. And
How?
that we have to go get a substitute.
Absolutely, but if I had the days, you'd have to go get a substitute as well.
Well,
So you've already recouped the cost of that substitute by taking the 400 and some odd dollars out of my paycheck for the day deduct.
well,
I'm
we-
not getting paid for that day, and you're not paying anybody for that day.
I understand where you're coming from. I understand that. It is again though, beyond what we agreed to in contract. The contract says we'll be there that many days, we will pay you for that many days. When we do day deducts, that is in violation of the number of days we agreed to be at work. And to emphasize that this is a real thing, it's something that we're dealing with logistically and payroll, other places. It's just a recognition of and the reality that it does cost the district money to do that. So that was what was behind it. We don't have to agree, but that was what was behind it.
I really don't see this as an incentive to not use 12 days every year.
Okay?
Because once I get to 185, it's use it or lose it. Right? At least right now.
As it's written, right here,
At
yes.
least right now, okay, I have a little incentive to not use my personal days. Because if I don't use my personal days, I get reimbursed a little bit.
At the end
I
of the
just
year.
sat down and I
Okay.
filled out my sheet and I donated 1 to the personal leave bank. And I'm getting reimbursed. I didn't use, I think, 4 hours, so I'm getting 4 times 18. At least it's a little incentive to try to save personal days. There's no incentive here. Once I got to 185, and I think most people would go, well, I'm down to the last 2 weeks of school and I have 6. You know,
You take 'em.
I'm gonna,
I'm not opposed to adding language if you'd like to propose language beyond the 185 to
Well-
continue what as written now or whatever. Let's talk.
Question,
Okay?
can administration deny personal leave?
I believe they can. And again, for good reason, you almost have to be able to. If the circus comes to town and half the teachers want to go to the circus, at some point, the administration has to face the reality that I can't approve
So-
half of my staff to go to the circus.
So how does that work in the morning if I wake up and I don't feel good?
It wouldn't be any different than now.
But it's not sick leave, it's personal leave.
Okay.
And if I wake up and I'm sick, or if I wake up and say, you know, it's,
And when this came up a couple years ago, it was, the reasoning was to try to take care of those individuals that had something catastrophic, for lack of better words, things that really weren't in their control, and they were being forced to take day deducts. And so when we said we want to simplify it, that was the rationale.
Yep.
Do we want to,
and that's why we did the personal leave bank for employees to donate, so those who did have those
we're taking care of
extraordinary.
ourselves, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. We were taking care of ourselves, and we wanted to take care of our own. So we had those days that they could use if the extraordinary happened. And we have some who have those, and you know that as well as I do.
Sure.
And so the way I see it, we have language as well that we would like you to take a look at, and not nearly as drastic.
Let's take a look. Thank you.
No, for Dr. Hucker.
I got one.
Like three.
When I sat down and wrote this out and was looking at the leave policy as it currently sits, my first question was, has anybody ever used the exception?
And what do you mean,
Which
the
is that?
exception?
That would be, has anybody ever traded a personal day in for an extra day of sick leave?
Has anybody
Training.
ever lied about being sick?
No. Has anybody ever taken a personal leave day and added it so they could have 121 days of sick leave at the end?
I just filled out my sheet, okay, saying, well, instead of 120 sick days, take those and add 3 more sick days, or
Oh,
however
I
many
see.
sick
So
hours.
rolling that into the
Right,
sick
so
leave.
the exception.
I couldn't answer that.
Yeah, well, the exception currently says unused personal leave may be transferred and added to the annual total allocation of 15 days and therefore could exceed the 120-day total accumulation. I don't know if that's ever been used. I
So you're
don't
talking
know.
about
I don't know what it is.
DB.
I'm
1B.
talking about A, 6A1 exception.
6A1.
It's when we were just talking
Oh,
about.
okay,
When we just
okay.
So it's when we were just
so
talking
get rid of
about.
that.
You know, well, my question is, has anyone ever used it? I've never
I don't
heard of
know.
somebody use
Here's
it.
what I know. I know this is also referenced under personal leave, D, which you'd have to flip open your bigger book to see that. And I know that I've got an asterisk by that, because if the PTO conversations go, then most of that personal leave section would go and we wouldn't have to worry about it. But otherwise, if you read item B there under 1, under personal leave, it's basically saying the same thing, it's just under that different category. And what it says is, if personal leave is not used, it may be added to the accumulated sick leave at the end of the contract year, or a teacher may elect to be paid.
Right.
And I know that that is an administrative nightmare for us, because we have to send out about 250 communications to 250 employees, ask them which of these ors do you want, and then get the responses back, and then make that happen over there. And so I know general practice is if you have those extra days, I mean, we ought to just clean that up too, I guess, if that's the conversation, because I'm guessing, to answer your question, some must, because we've constantly, I mean, we sent out 250 letters this time. I'm assuming somebody there is gonna say, yeah, transfer mine to a personal leave and.
Or to sick leave.
Or the sick leave
Or
and
it's
so
just
forth.
been something that's been in the contract for eons.
Or it could be for eons and we just
And
haven't
we
looked.
just haven't ever changed
I know that
it.
Sarah in payroll, she is very frustrated with this piece, because she would like something cleaner. She would like to just say whatever you guys would like. If it's look, let's just automatically roll that over and add it to your accumulated days until you hit that max, and then you automatically get paid, and we don't even have to ask the question each and every year and wait for 250 people to reply back and do all that. So yeah, we're in agreement that it's
I have no
weird.
problem
I
with
think
it.
the exception
Yeah, I
has
don't
been
know.
And if
taken.
you look at our proposal, if we go past this and we go to the proposal when we clean up the sunset language, we propose the same thing to take that
Clean
out,
that up.
to clean that up. So, the exception,
I just don't know if that's,
You're right.
I don't know if that's
It's an
ever been,
accounting
used. And when you were talking about rolling it over to the maximum, are you talking the maximum of personal leave, which is currently,
120.
120.
no, personal leave is
Or personal
currently
leave.
Be rolled into sick leave.
5 or 6.
Right.
But I don't think anybody wanted to roll it over into sick leave. I personally
Well,
wouldn't.
that's the option that's in
Right.
D.
Yeah, that's
Right.
Or B.
an option,
Yes.
or get paid.
Or get paid.
And then the incentive for pay is much greater for me to stay in the classroom than to roll it over into my sick leave when I'm already rolling over 12 or 13 and a half days this year. Well, I'm losing 13 and a half days because I'm already at the 120. So it's more incentive for me to stay in the classroom to get that $18 per hour.
Sure. That makes sense.
That's, so when we sat down and looked, that was my number one question, and I said, the accounting nightmare, that's what I have there, so, I just don't know. So, item B would be to add item D to 6 leaves A sick leave, and that would be a maximum of 2 days per year, maybe used for district health employees for mental health. Then I'll go on to number 2, emergency leave. I think the way it's written right now as B, if you take a look at number 6 leaves, A is sick leave, B says emergency leave. I think that's confusing because emergency leave is actually part of sick leave.
That's correct.
And I think that this almost gives it an illusion that it's an extra 5 days, and we know it's not.
Right.
So I would slide B over to like number 2 in under sick leave, and then say emergency leave. We do like the definition of who our immediate family is, but one of the issues that we have is that if my son or daughter is sick, I'm sick. And we would like to see that to change the amount from 5 for immediate family to all and current, any and all current sick days. So if I have 13 days, or 15 days, 14 if I, give one to the sick bank. If I have 14 days, I would be able to utilize for them for my son, my daughter, taking my father.
And I remember having 2 young children and my wife and I both teaching. Who would, okay, how many emergency days did you use because our kids are sick? Okay, I'm at 3. How many? Well, I'm at 4. Okay, well now today you better use yours. And so that would be really simplifying that. If your kids are sick, you're sick. If your mother is in the hospital and she's sick and you need to go take care of her, you're sick.
If your spouse is,
And that's one of the reasons why we proposed PTO, was so that we didn't have people having to clarify why, and then being limited at 5. Oh, your kids can only be sick 5 times. And that was one of the win-wins. When you say what's a win-win, we felt like that was a win for the employees, the teachers, that we took away that, well, you've got to keep track. Is my kid sick? How many times has my kid been sick? Am I at my 5? Do I have, and
Am I gonna have to pay a sub?
yeah. Yep.
but why can't we just say that if you're sick, sick is you and your immediate family? I mean, your emergencies should be that. It's an emergency of a funeral or something to that effect that is not somebody that is immediately you're in charge of their care.
I have a brother who's not my blood brother. but he's my brother. He's lived with me from the time he was a junior in high school till we graduated college, in my parents' house. If he were to go into the hospital today, I have no emergency leave to go see him, and he's my brother.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe that our classified staff now only have what is considered sick leave. And it's not,
That's not true.
so it is still
And-
delineated between if they're sick, but if their kids are sick, it doesn't include their sick leave. Like they have, I know they have sick leave and personal leave, but when they're sick, it's just sick leave. But there's no deciding if it's emergency or a doctor's appointment or if it's all of our different
Miss-
criteria.
That is true.
Okay. So
And-
the
and-
classified
and-
staff, all they
and-
have to
and-
say is
And Miss,
a sick leave.
That's correct. Yes.
They
that's
don't
correct.
have to say it's a doctor's appointment or it's
Right.
emergency or it's,
And
Correct.
I think we're amenable to trying to do the same thing for our teachers. Again, we were trying to work for a win-win, and that was one of the wins we were trying to get, is we don't agree. I can't say we. Whenever I say we, I'm talking about me and the mouse in my pocket. That's who I'm talking about. I don't believe that we should be asking our teachers to delineate. So I think we're in agreement that trying to delineate, but again, trying to find a win-win but no, I would be very amenable to taking away and I'm trying to read, and so I really want to be careful
No,
with
I
what I say, because I
understand.
don't
I
want to throw
understand.
anything on the table but want to know my knee-jerk, why do we even have B on there? Why don't we discuss what sick leave is? Why are we even, why is emergency leave? And I wasn't here when that got put in, I'm not being critical, but I don't even know why it was put in there. And that's been something that we've looked at since we've been here and said, how can we figure out a way to fix that? And that was honestly the basis behind going to the PTO and then trying to create language that was a win-win so that we could make that work. So I think this is something that we could come to an easy agreement on, is how we could clean this up and make it so that we're treating you like professionals. We're not asking you to lie about if your kid's sick or not. That's putting you in a very unfair situation. I don't think it's fair if your kid's sick and you have to take a day deduct because I'm not I think we can clean that up. I think this is
I
something
think
that we
that
can
would solve a
come to
lot.
really a lot of common ground on.
and especially, go ahead.
I think it would solve a lot of issues just by taking away that language and just saying your sick leave is just that. It's for when you are sick or when your kid or your spouse or your parent who you are now taking care of is sick or has a doctor's appointment and you need to use it. It would take care of all of those issues where before it was teachers having to call in and say I'm sick because their kid was sick, or they were going to have a day deduct because they were out of anything, or they had to use up all their personal leave for their child and not be
And
able to
then-
dip into any.
And before applying for more emergency leave. So I think
I
clean
think
up.
we've made it
I
overly
think
cumbersome.
I think cleanup language is important. The other aspect I think that would help as well is that as an administrative assistant in our schools, it's very difficult. And even our teachers are never really truly told that your first appointment is an emergency appointment leave, but if you have to have a follow-up appointment for that exact same reason, now it becomes sick. It's no longer appointment, now it's sick.
The whole thing is
You know,
confusing.
So it's a very confusing,
Yeah.
it's very, very confusing. And we've
lot to
attempted this before,
2 years ago.
and it's very cumbersome, it's very confusing.
Okay, so I guess my question would be, if we're in agreement that this needs to be cleaned up, we're also in agreement that we're kind of in a situation where, is this something that we want to put off and say, we're going to come together, we're going to fix it, and by the time we have our next negotiations, we're going to bring something that's a win-win, that works for everybody? Is it something we need to hammer out, because we probably aren't going to get it done before the end of the day today? How do we move forward? What's a good way to move forward so that we can fix this?
Well, I think it has to be, talking about it in one meeting isn't, and then pushing it off to the next negotiation cycle
Okay.
isn't a good option.
All right. I'll tell you what, why don't I put together some, is it all right, Dr. Hawker, if I suggest that you and I sit down, we take a look at what we can do with some language and that? And if I'm not saying that the proposed language that I have here is perfect. I think that maybe we could make it better, but
I think that, having it personal PTO, when I Googled PTO, first thing that came up with paid time off. That second time was personal time off. So paid time off, and I think that's when people think PTO, that's the first thing they think of, and not personal. And that, would paid, PTO is paid time off, because personal leave today, they're requesting that you make that personal leave at least 5 days in advance, and can be denied. And
I don't have a problem changing it to paid.
I just don't know what, how that, so I think that, cleaning up the language is much simpler than.
As we agree that one of the reasons why personal leave was put in here was because we were so tight and stringent on this definition of sick, and tried to be so big
Okay.
brother-ish on how you use
Right.
those days. Is there a way for us to negotiate whether 17 and 18 days is still the appropriate day if we were willing to give more freedom on how those days were used?
And when ASOP, when entering in an ASOP, how would, I don't know, this is a question that's kind of forward, but how would you put that in ASOP? Would it just be PTO?
If it's paid time off,
It just-
we aren't looking over your shoulder. We respect you as professionals, that you're going to meet the definition of what's here. And why would we expect you to?
I agree. I agree, and I appreciate that. I do. I'm concerned from your aspect as well, though, because if 85 teachers wake up one morning and go, "It's a beautiful day, I think I'll go sunstanding."
That would be a problem.
That would be a huge problem.
Yes. And so now to come back again, having it at 18 days, that's much more of a temptation than if we had it at 12 days. So just because that's what's on the paper, I'll use 12 days. And knowing that if I am unwise in the days that I take sun tanning when the weather's good in September, and knowing that it is a real cost to the district if I get into a day deduct because I catch the flu in February, perhaps there is some justification for saying day deducts are a serious thing. Please use those days judiciously. Does that make sense?
It does. If I'm out of day deduct, or if I'm out of days and I do get sick, does my 120 kick in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So are those 120, like anything that we have banked right now, are those sick days, or are those gonna roll into just PTO days?
No. that's,
That was-
I understand
Oh,
where,
boy, that,
That's my question. I
it's-
mean, I understand, but
Right.
nothing in here says what happens with what we already have paid.
it was not our intention that you would lose them.
Okay.
But one of the reasons why, I guess, having that, and I just threw in 5 because it's a work week. But if you look in number 3 in the proposed language,
It's
I put
actually-
in 5. 6 is
It's
in the
actually
term.
currently 6, and then,
Yes.
and when that was,
Like I said, and I don't mind making it 6. I'm just saying where the 5 came from.
Right.
It's not anything that but I put in 5 because it was a work week.
Yeah.
One of the reasons behind that was if you had 120 days and you got a really good deal on an around-the-world cruise and you want to take 90 days of that off, that probably wouldn't be, and so at some point, there needs to be some protection there. Not that anybody ever would, but we might hire a new teacher in 5 years that might not be that professional, that might think about doing that. So it's certainly not saying that anybody would do it, but what about in the future if somebody wanted to do that? So to try to govern those 120 days and make sure that they're used appropriately, that would be the reason for that language in 3.
And I get that, but I'm just saying what we already have banked, are you gonna keep that as, because they were technically sick days? We're gonna stay them as sick days, or are we
my
gonna just roll them
proposal-
as to PTO?
And again, when I say mine, and it's me and the mouse in my pocket, the smart people at the table can say I'm wrong, was not to distinguish between the two. One of the reasons to go to paid time off would be to not distinguish between it.
And then the part in here where you talk about a district rate of $20 per day would be paid back, reimbursed. Have you thought about an incentive thought on here? I know other schools do it, like Mandan and a few others, where they give, I believe in their negotiated agreement for this year, or for the next 2 cycles, if you're 20 years, 20 plus years in the district, you get 90 or 80, I'm not gonna be right on my numbers, 80 some dollars per day. And if you're 25 years in the district,
So they stepped it
they
in.
prorated.
they prorated it for your longevity with the district. Have you thought about an incentive that way to keep those teachers? I know we have experienced a significant amount of rollover in the last several years, and so just those kind of perks might be something to, one, have people want to bank more days to get to that 185. So once you get to that 185, then you would be able to be eligible for this higher increment.
I'll answer, my first answer would be where the $20 came from. The only
I
reason
can
why
answer-
there's
I can
20
answer that
is because
question.
of what's in there now.
Right, I can
And
answer,
so,
you know,
if we were going to look at incentive, I'm not opposed to an incentive. One of the things that we would have to do, though, is we would have to take some time and really look at how we could incrementally implement that incentive so that we didn't potentially bust the budget with, if we've got, I think we have, 40 employees right now that are in the career increments. If those 40 said, woo-hoo, and they all left and they all had 120 days banked and they all did that all at once next year, that would be a significant fiscal impact to, and so
Absolutely.
we would probably need to come up with an agreement on how we could implement or tier that in,
Right, and
similar
I-
to what Mandan.
And they
Are
have
we
it the
opposed to
next
have
year,
that
yeah.
conversation? Me and the mouse in my pocket would not be opposed to having that conversation.
Just something that would make it so that you.
I think when we are talking about win-win, having that incentive is definitely a way to create a win in that scenario.
With the way it's worded now, there is no sick leave, obviously. Does every district have to designate a certain amount of days, like legally or anything?
No,
Okay, I just wanted to
no.
ask.
From the state's perspective?
Yeah, like, I was just curious to,
In fact, that's something that I actually investigated earlier, because there was a question earlier, and
about 10 days.
there is,
Yeah,
required,
that's what it was.
the Century Code requires 10 days for sick leave.
if Century Code does,
Specified.
federal code does not. There is no federal law that mandates the,
okay.
the payment.
I think, and I don't know, but I've heard that, you know, in past times when we've talked about PTO, that was one of the things that was brought up, is that there is a century code out there, and I don't know for a fact, I have not investigated it.
Something we could look at.
I have not
further.
investigated it.
But regardless, we're certainly not proposing that you would take less than 10 days. You know, our initial offer is at 12, and so we wouldn't violate the 10 in any way.
And are you set at 12? Or is, because right now, many of us are at 17 or 18.
Mhm.
So is there room for going to like 15?
Again, and man, I wished I was smart enough to be able to say I have a really scientific reason. I took 5 days, it's a work week, off of the 17, and I came to 12. And is that showing too much in my hand as to just how smart I am? I mean, that's the math that came to a 12. If we would like to talk and that, I do think where if we recognize and respect and give you more latitude with your ability to take days off, I'm not sure that the 18 or the 17 remains necessary, because you would have much more latitude in how you could use. And again, that would provide a win for the district on the district side. If we could reduce those days, what the perfect number for those day reduction, I think 12 was it was 2 weeks sick leave. That's pretty common, plus 2. So I thought 2 weeks plus 2, and it just took an easy 5 round number off of the current 17, and so 12 was a good number, and I think it's a good number, but willing to be told why it's not. That's better than a day a month.
And if we had, because it took a lot to be able to bank personal leave, so if somebody did actually bank personal leave for next year, and hypothetically this, what would happen to those personal days if we decided to roll them over to the following year or carry them
My
over?
proposal would be it would go into the 120.
Okay.
If you weren't, or the 185, it would roll into the 185. One of the things we could do by increasing that to 185, besides incentivizing being in the classroom, is it did give us room. If you did have personal days banked, we could roll them in and not have any conflict or conversation about what we do with those days. You would still keep them. They'd still be yours.
All right, so then we will modify this conversation for yet again. And these suggestions here that we have as well, we'll incorporate those.
Sounds good. I can go to work.
Okay, we'll bring that back then for conversation as well.
You know, if you have to do the same thing I do, I think you just ask for a 2-minute break.
Could we have a 5-minute break?
Sure. Want a 5-minute break?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break.
I think I'm in agreement.
There's only 25 minutes left, so.
Well,
We still want a
25 minutes might be a little too long.
No, I just want a break. I don't have to do anything.
25 minutes might be a little bit too long.
We don't
All
need
right,
to talk
let's
about it.
take a
Let's
recess
go.
for just a minute, or 5. Yeah, why did Rick and Mortis set it?
I know, I'm like, oh man, that was hard to get out of
They did.
See this so 6 of them.
Right. And I just took the 7.75 because we saved that. for the Social Security. So
I would take care of that. That would yes, it would. Because I wasn't quite thinking of doing that.
but that's done.
So anyway. Goes back to the concerns from the start. It's a pretty major change. And like you said, if they don't have the police force, two worlds collide, right? That's a problem. And that's, I think, from the school district's standpoint, that's why it's probably more restricted.
Look at you.
Usually sit quiet. So I usually sit quiet.
Last time I checked, these
I all know that I
Those are all staged.
could then probably explain this. So I did. And I that's why I'm saying, and I need you to say that.
Goodness, I feel like I've sat here without moving for a while. I feel like I've spent a lot of time in this room. Too much.
That's how I felt this morning.
I think we're going on like 7 hours today or something in here, 6 hours at least.
It certainly feels like it doesn't.
Assessment results meetings all morning, sat in a chair.
So do we want to take a look at that real quick? It should be a pretty quick conversation on eliminating the pilot language and sunset clause. Or do we want to just finish having this conversation on personal leave?
Well, I think we are going to do that until we write a budget draft. And that certainly ties into the sunset clause. There's no need.
Thank you. Thank you. I do feel better.
And I apologize about the minutes. It's in Bismarck today, and I'm like, good. I'm glad you guys came, because
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's a good idea.
Okay. One for the dog.
Yeah, the right idea. I know, I understand them too. Yeah, no, I keep forgetting to wear that.
I watched that video. What's that mean?
No, that means, no, the worst is when you're doing a bunch of bookies and it says, are you still dead? I'm like, I'm ready to throw this in blood.
Yeah. Yep.
Seriously, I was
What
doing that
happened
this
is
morning.
asking you to bring your
Are are you done? Are you still working out? I'm like, what is going on here? But I've been older version and it
Saying your heart
doesn't.
rate is a little high and
I usually do it just to track my distance. I never knew how far I was running.
All right, Keith, you ready?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
you need to.
All right, let's go ahead and resume from our quick break. So we've had a good conversation about the leave and PTO language. Thank you. We've had a good conversation about the leave and PTO language. And of course, as part of that is that personal day sunset clause that expires in another year. I know, Mr. Harris, you do have a handout for that.
I do
as well.
have some proposed language for that.
Okay, let's go ahead and
Again,
have
this,
that conjunction conversation. I know
this, this would only be, really relevant if we don't hammer out that other aspect, but if we are able to, then this is just some proposed language for cleaning up that sunset clause personal leave.
And this also includes that item H, piloted leave language.
That's correct.
That was already,
I just combined the two.
yes.
And so the language that I'm proposing is personal leave may be taken in a minimum amount of 1 hour at a time with 1/2 hour increments after the first 1 hour. I just took that language right out of the agreed upon pilot.
Yep.
And then on B, I put if personal leave is not used, it will be added to the accumulated sick leave at the end of the contract year. Again, our intention there is to get rid of the or, so that we kind of clean up logistically how not having to send out 250 letters and trying to take care of that option. Then I'm proposing that we would just eliminate the sunset clause altogether on the personal leave. When we were asked to take a look at how many teachers had used the 6 days in a row, we found out that there, to date, none had done that. We had a few that had taken 5 days and a few that had taken 4, but none that had taken the 6. So I don't believe it's been abused. I don't see personally any reason why we need to revert back to losing that. I think it's been used responsibility, and I have no problem.
That is that summary that Keith's referring to, just for your reference. Just to, no sense in me having all these copies, so share them with you.
And I know that when we sat down and negotiated, the pilot, for the third day and so forth, that was the concern. And I'm really happy to see that our staff has been professional and respectful about that.
We 100%
So
agree.
I think that is incredibly important, so. Was the 1 hour at a time, because I know we came back and discussed this earlier this year, the 1 hour, and was that successful? Was that abused?
In all honesty, I don't believe it was. I believe the staff did a good job with it. The one concern that we have had is on occasion, we've had people who said, we're going, I don't care if the class is covered or not. And we would like to be able to come to a better agreement there where, like with any other personal, if it's unable to be covered for whatever reason, we would still like to be able to say, you know what, we need your help. And so as I've talked to administrators, the only issue that I've ever had come of it was when they've had to go back, and this hasn't happened very often, and talk to a staff member and say, hey, we could not get your class covered. I don't care. I'm going anyway.
And the teachers.
And that was the exception, not the rule.
And I can
but
understand.
that was the only concern.
Right. I can understand that concern. But I can also understand, you know, if somebody's put in for the personal leave
Absolutely.
and has made those arrangements, and their husband or wife has gotten the time off, and then all of a sudden, we can't find coverage, you can't go, well, I've got the tickets.
Without question.
And-
So we've
and
talked
so I
about,
can
maybe
understand.
there's a way that we need to do it so that we are fair to the staff that says there needs to be maybe an extra step in there where we put in, you get the preliminary approval upon getting coverage, and then final approval after coverage happens, or something. I don't know what we have to do. But again, I think, I would hate to have that stall anything with making, because this is the right thing to do. It would just be nice to maybe have the conversation that says, it'd be nice to do away with that exception that occurs from time to time.
Mr. Harris, I hope you like me.
Oh, I love you, man.
And that's good, because if I go back and tell my members that B, they're not gonna get paid for any days,
That was my,
I'm not gonna, you won't know me very long.
that was my
What-
first question.
which one?
The or,
Oh,
the or.
what if we did this? What if we talked along the lines of,
Right there.
what Dr. Hawker said? What if it's personal leave that is not used will be added to the accumulated sick leave at the end of the contract year and after, at up to the 120 max, and then all leave will be paid out after that? So that we aren't having to do the
But you-
250 letters and treating every
so you-
individual differently.
So, but right now, that 120 is assuming it's PTO. Currently, right now, we can accumulate up to 5 or 6, depending upon how many days we get next year.
Okay.
So
So-
it would not go into that 120 at all. It would accumulate to the
So
whatever
what
number.
about the other way around? What if we keep the second half of the sentence, get rid of the first half? So simply, if you have extra days at the end, you're gonna be paid out at the price of the sub.
I think that what let's do this. That up to the 5 days, so if you have more than your allotted number, you know, for a veteran teacher, 40 hours, for a new teacher, 48 hours, everything up to 48 hours stays in personal, is rolled over. Anything above those hours, paid out.
So we would agree, just don't put it in, just don't
Don't
Put it
offer that
into
sick leave.
sick.
Don't offer that sick leave.
put it into personal until you max out your personal,
And
then you're paid out.
Yes.
I think we could do
Unused sick
that.
goes
That would
to sick.
eliminate the need to send out letters.
Right.
I think we could live with that.
Because that way, they're still, I'm not gonna get shot or lynched or anything else. And you
And
can
I
still,
like you.
and you
I
can
don't
still like
want
me.
you. Yeah.
So I think that's, you know, and you could save,
So the language would be, if personal leave is not used, it will be added to the accumulated personal leave,
yeah.
right?
Up to the maximum allowed, which would be 40 or 48, depending upon their years. And that would, the only thing that would change then, and this would, that would affect differently, is our personal leave bank. Because one of the options on that sheet is to give to the personal leave
You
bank.
can donate to the personal
Right.
leave bank. Yep.
But maybe that would just be could be an email sent out instead of a letter.
And I'm thinking that, I don't know, and maybe you can tell me.
Well, we
has-
could send that letter before the end of the year, and people could still donate to the personal leave bank.
Absolutely, it would just deduct from their 5 days or 4 days, whatever.
It would just, yeah.
Yeah. The other option, you know, and I don't know how many people have used the personal leave bank, and I don't know how many, what the status of that personal leave bank is in numbers, but the other option is, I know with sick leave, if we get down to the point with our sick leave bank that we need more, we send the email out stating, are you going to protect, you know, we're taking your days.
At the start of the year, we had 80 hours, I believe, in the personal leave bank. And I believe we had one request for a personal leave bank this year. And that request was granted, but we're still, so I think we're sitting think that was for 16 hours. And so we're writing that 64 or something like that hours remaining.
So it has served its purpose.
Yep.
That's exactly.
Yeah, there's not a lot there, and I'd have to check with Sarah what comes back. Part of the letter that was sent out gave people the option.
Right.
We, according to the agreement, we give it every year, and then if we get below a certain number, it goes to the DEA to send out a call for more.
Right.
And I don't know that we have to even change that.
Okay.
So. So we're going to, all unused leave will automatically accrue up to the 48, and then automatically be
Paid out at
the end of
some
the
day.
year.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the personal leave is not used, it will be added to the accumulated personal leave to the maximum allowed. Because again, it's dependent
I
upon.
put up to, but I can
Yep.
put maximum allowed.
Right, 40 to 48 hours, and then after that, be paid out. Done.
Okay.
I think I can sell that.
I can change that language.
Hmm?
Like I say, our
Something.
desire was to get rid of the or in that, or the, and so we can make that work.
Perfect.
Okay, well, that wraps up really item G and H with that pilot leave discussion. And item I is later, and item J is later. So I think as we move into the next agenda item of scheduling next meeting, just want to make sure, based back on our earlier conversation today with the counteroffer from the Teachers Association, as we appear to be nowhere close to settling, I'm happy. I mean, I'd love to have somebody pencil out on a whiteboard or something where you think this extra money is, because we want to wrap this up. But of course, if we can't, we can't. I think it's important to make sure you're aware of our, you do know about the health insurance meetings and the committee and the recommendation for an increase to our health insurance, plans. Those dollars are directly associated with the new dollars that we say we've got, coming in from next year. And that increase is going to be somewhere between 13 to 15%. The recommendation is 15 to 18. We met today with Hayes and that committee leaning more towards the 13 side, and that decision's not going to be made, I guess, for about another month. Hayes wants to have all of the May expenses in order to make that final recommendation, and they won't be able to get that until June 14th. Is that correct? Yep. And so sometime between June 14th and the end of June, we'll receive the final, recommendation from Hayes, which we pay an exorbitant amount of money to give us recommendations. So I think you just need to know that that's there. We as a district, earlier on in our conversations, we took off dental and vision from our negotiation contract because there's no sense in that's not part of the healthcare, the health committee's decisions. So it doesn't need to go into the negotiated agreement. But it is the full district's intent to provide district dental and vision to our employees next year. That information's already been shared out with our classified staff, so it should be no secret. And our goal is to provide as comparable as we can to every group. The dental insurance will create an opportunity for an 80% district coverage, 20% employee coverage, which will create some very reasonable dental for those that want to take advantage of it. Some very reasonable dental insurance plans. Vision will just be an opt-in opportunity for anybody. You'll get the pre-tax benefits of having that plan, but there's no district contribution plan for the vision, there's just the offering. So you need to know that's there, and then, gosh, I'm just asking, somebody's got to help me understand how we think there's a 10% additional dollars out there for our teachers, because if there's something we're missing, we'd like to know that, but there's to my knowledge, there's not. I would be happy to take you through the $2.3 million of dollars that are coming in, and we can walk right back through everything and see where that all ends up. So obviously that's going to be our big hanging point. We want to come to terms, we want to come to agreements.
Absolutely.
But if we can't, I also don't want to waste more time.
I guess I'm going to go back and say, we made the offer, we made the counter offer, and I was disappointed in the statement that what we brought you is it. And
because did you think I was going to try to lowball you, so you guys make an offer and then I would come up a little bit?
That's kind of what negotiations are, and that's how it's been. That's how it's been in the past, and that's traditional negotiations. And so it's unfortunate that we can't. And
well, I think what's missing is the automatic assumption of movement on a lane scale doesn't affect budget. It does affect budget, and that's comparable to an absolute 2% increase. Every teacher would be getting at least $900 in that move. With the additional, we were giving an additional 1.5 to TFFR, which accumulated to about a 3.5% pay raise. So off of any teacher's salary, you can add 3.5% to that, and it's at least that much, because the TFFR is even a little better because of the pre-tax perks with FICA and whatnot. So every teacher was going to stand to get a gain of like $1,600 or so, $1,650 I think is what that math came out to. So, but that's a far cry away from 10%. And so I guess I think for the essence of sanity around this table, your time as well as everybody's time, I think we just need to decide. If there's no further conversations about that, we just need to know that, and we can move the ball forward with.
We want to have a conversation about. We want to see what we can do, but I mean, we believed that the 1.5 was a little low, and that's why we offered, we came back, and that's what you wanted, was a counter offer. And I apologize if I hurt you, that's a bad word, I'm sorry if I insulted you with their 10%. But it was a counter offer, and so that's where we stand. Our counter offer is there, and we would love to talk and do some discussions and look at some possibilities. But I think that we've brought a lot of numbers. We've provided a lot of information last time that was dismissed, and I think that's where we stand. I mean, that's where we're at. I don't know what else to tell you.
Well, all right. I guess as we set meeting dates for next time, again, we are where we are as well with that 3.5% with 1.5 TFFR and steps. That's the 3.5%, comparable. Plus we're adding on dental and opportunity for vision, and
but that was pulled off the table.
Yeah, that's
was pulled off the table.
Expense, but you just need to know, as you are referencing this $2.3 million of new money that's coming in, you need to go through that spreadsheet and deduct out the new hires for next year with growth, with insurance increase, with all of this stuff, and you'll find that our offers over and above what we really we're going to be stretched to do that. So So yes, you can imagine our disappointment, my disappointment. I won't speak as we either. I don't have a mouse in my pocket, but to hear a 9 3/4%, counter offer after a 3.5% best offer, it just doesn't appear that we're going to make it to an agreement. And I think if that's the case, we really just should know that, and we can move to impasse, and we can go through that entire process.
Well, it sounds like you've declared it.
Well, I haven't declared it. I'm asking if that's the wishes of the DEA.
It is not our wish to go to
No.
impasse, absolutely not. However,
Then are you
negotiations,
prepared to reconsider your offer?
Are you prepared to reconsider yours?
We made our best offer.
Okay, is that the only offer? Are you saying that is the final offer, that is it? Is that,
Kent, where are we at? What's our, I mean, yeah,
I mean,
I don't want this isn't a war between
no,
Sean and our
but
teachers.
this, we just told you, this is not our final offer. We're willing to negotiate, and we're willing to go to bat for these people. We're willing to work tirelessly into the summer if we have to go to bat and step up for every one of these teachers that stands in front of a classroom right now. Every day, they stand in front of a classroom right now, in some of them in some not very good situations, okay? They're standing in front of a classroom. We're doing a job, honestly, that not a lot of people want anymore. People are not beating down the doors of the universities to go into education. And so we'll do what we have to. We will fight for these people.
Well, Jay, I don't
and-
want you to paint the picture that you're fighting against me.
No, we're not
No,
fighting
I'm on the
against you.
same exact page.
We're not fighting against
I'm
you.
100% committed to doing the very best we can for our staff. And that's always been my mantra. And I just need to make sure everybody, recognizes that. Jim, I don't come with a half offer hoping that you guys will settle somewhere in between. Again, that's just a waste of time. We're doing our very utmost best that we can. We've been cutting through this as we've talked. We've talked about our, teacher dues and contributions there, and as things come off or get added on, everything's all real numbers, and we're absolutely just trying to make sure, as a teaching staff, as a school district, we'll never survive in the community if we bankrupt the district. That'll never happen. And we know, I know, we want to do our very best for our teachers.
Right.
But
And-
reckon our teachers are also currently the #1 paid staff in the state. So we just have to be mindful that whatever the obligations have been in the past with the district to get us to where we are, that's awesome. That's put us, right where we are, #1. And that's why I just think it's not.
and some of that was done by the teachers. The lane freeze a decade ago to provide the 1.22 for the first year teachers. Because prior to that, we were on a 1.0 set schedule. And so we wanted to recruit teachers. We wanted to give them the opportunity. And so our teachers have put it. We've accepted offers when there's said there's no money. And then they found money to give a bigger raise to administration. We know that, and I know that we're not negotiating for administrators and that they're negotiating for themselves, but we know that they asked for 6% because the ceiling was raised 6%. And we know that 6% is based upon numbers provided by the district, is kind of the cost of construction. If we wait to construct the high school, that's going to be the increased cost. So, we kind of went that aspect, with the 6%, that's kind of where we went, but not figuring the 2% because that has never been a part of our discussions before. And, maybe we have to make that change and that's fine. But I think that was part of the reason why we went with the numbers what we went to, is that it seems to be the common theme.
And every year we're told, we have no money, we have no money, we have no money. And at the end of the year, we have more than pretty much any of the bigger school districts in our state. Every year, we have more.
Well, and I thought about that after our last meeting, and I really wished I could give you great answers. All I can say is, perhaps there were, I know in our district as well, that we've had several unfilled positions move from year to year to year. I'm sure they're budgeted at the beginning of the year, and when they don't get filled, that makes it look like there's all that extra money, left at the end of the year. But the intent is, well, at least the intent for me moving forward is to staff our facilities appropriately, get the help where it needs to be. And so all of these positions that we perhaps haven't filled in the past, I'm not planning to not fill those moving forward. I'm planning to move those. But I can see how if I didn't fill all 5 of our current elementary teaching positions, there's, I don't know, $250,000, easy right there that we likely wouldn't spend. But that comes at a cost of larger classrooms and things. So I can see that maybe that happens. Kent and I are adamant. Our intent is not to phony up, and I'm not saying that was the past, but to hide numbers in a budget cycle at the beginning of the year and then have monster carryovers at the end of the year and pat ourselves on the back and say, oh great, look at how much money we saved. No, that's not what we're about. We want true reflection of our dollars, and moving forward, that's where we're at with this. And so I just feel like, gosh, if there's, Kent, I guess help me out here. Where are we at with our 3.5%, the financial situation from your perspective with the district moving forward? I think it's important for the DEA to know the I don't know if I want to call it thin ice, but the challenge that we'll have with operating our district moving forward.
Well, it goes down to the first meeting that we had. It's defining that new money and where does that new money go. So today, just the health insurance alone, if we take that, whether it's 2.1 million or 2.3 million, I mean that's really the number that we're looking at from the state. The general fund mill levy, we're at the maximum with 70. There are the miscellaneous levy that the district isn't levying right now. The goal was, given the referendum, to hold on to those for construction and physical property needs, that they wouldn't be directed towards salaries and benefits. But that's, I don't know, as far as the school board, those discussions haven't been had at the school board level. We had some of those at the budget committee level. But really it's of that new state money, if that's the question. Yeah. What buckets do those go in? And we have a pretty good idea now where how much the classified will get of that based on the ND-PERS adjustment. And then the health insurance, that isn't decided yet. We have a recommendation today from there, but I think that's the...
Of 13%, which equates to about how much money?
13% would be about $500,000 to the district. 450,000, between 450 and 500,000.
So I think that's just an important number to know.
But I think if we're at a point of kind of supporting different, proposals or counter proposals, I think really that's the gist, I believe, right? Is here's these dollars, and we kind of agreed on that the first meeting that I was at. Here's the new state money, and then these are the places those new dollars are being spread out. And
so did classified get 4% increase?
To their ND-PERS. So as I guess as we set our next meeting, I think this is just important to, we clearly have some other things we can wrap up and work on. So I think it would be appropriate for us to at least try to meet again for the sake of those components. And then we'll certainly revisit these conversations. So with that, that takes us to scheduling our next meeting. Okay, what's your thoughts, recommendations for the next meeting?
Before we get on that, I have a question I'd like to ask Dr. Hawker.
Absolutely.
Are you opposed to using any of the money that's in the rollover?
In the reserves?
Yes.
Well, the challenge is, first of all, sustainability, and second of all, with the results of the referendum, the board, in fairness, we haven't had those conversations.
Okay.
We have contemplated hiring a company to help put our next path. I mean, the reality is our challenges have not gone away with the failed referendum.
I agree.
But our
And my reasoning for asking that is that if the past has created part of this, should the past help to solve part of this? That was my reasoning for asking that question. You know, and okay, that was the question I needed to ask. Thank you. Next week is state track meet. So that's,
Jim, when does that start?
we leave, we send the first coaches down Thursday afternoon, and everybody else goes down Thursday evening at 6.
Then we've got graduation on,
The 26th,
I have regional bar.
and Memorial Day is the 27th.
I'll be gone for the.
And I think this is the last week of school
Yeah.
is stressful enough as it is.
So are we looking at the 29th?
When's regional track, or regional golf?
I'll be back by then.
When's state golf?
Not till the following week. If we qualify, it would be June 3rd and 4th or 4th.
well, we're qualifying.
28th or 28th, 29th?
The
She's
28th
busy
is-
the
They're busy.
28th. The
28th.
28th is regional,
Okay,
so I
got
leave
it,
on the
so-
27th because it's in Dunseith. But I could do the,
That's a long ways away.
yeah. The 29th works for me though.
29th works for me.
Yeah, it doesn't for me.
Okay.
Just gonna mess up plans.
30th?
but-
No?
That's
The
hard
whole
for
rest of
me.
that week.
Okay.
What about, did we miss Tuesday?
Oh,
21st, right?
Now, what about Tuesday the 21st? I have on there the high school choir concert. Anybody around this table tied up with that?
what'd you say, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? No?
I don't
Well,
know.
Wednesday we can't, because we have graduation at the,
Yeah, that's
Right.
What about Tuesday, I guess was the question? Or is that too soon? Today's Thursday.
that's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I can do that.
All right, let's do Tuesday the 21st. Same time?
Yep.
Okay, Tuesday the 21st at 5:30.
Brief.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Okay, so item, where are we at? Where am I? 12? No.
11? Well, we got a debrief. That's 8.
7, 8, yeah, 8.
Or 7.
All right, I guess 7 topics for next meeting. We know those.
I think it's done.
I think we're okay with that. So let's go through the debrief. And I know a couple of things, the signed tentative work, or tentative agreements on the workday and the vacancies and transfers. Got that one down. We're gonna bring back the minutes for approval.
We will try to bring back the maintenance of standard clause after we have it reviewed
Yep.
for the next meeting.
And the DEA was gonna bring back language in regards to the placement
Placement
hours
hours
schedule
schedule.
with the vocational
Yep.
focus there. And we received a counter offer from the DEA of 6.75 for TFFR and $375 added to the base. And I added in the recognition of the steps, equaling about 2% as well. Okay, the safe workplace language.
We had a discussion about it and talked about it would be better as policy is a living document that can be changed as needed and not tied to a negotiation cycle. And that a committee should be developed to maybe look at policies.
Thank you for that.
But we recognize it hasn't been agreed upon or moved.
That's right, and that will.
Cut me off, I was getting
Sorry.
there.
Sorry.
Okay, and leave language PTO, Mr. Harris is going to
Do some work.
Update that.
get to work, I guess
I'll get
we'll
to
we'll
work.
say that. And that addresses the next two items, the personal day sunset clause and the pilot leave language.
Well, I think we've agreed on the language on that, in the event that we can't agree on the people.
PTO?
The PTO pay
Okay.
time off. So
Well,
I
that
think we
sounds-
have a backup, no matter what, we agree that probably the sunset clause and the pilot needs to continue. One needs to go away and one needs to
It
continue.
needs to be added permanently. We scheduled our next meeting?
Yep.
We'll schedule our next meeting. Anything else? Okay, we will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Races out in Station 19 by 2 years. I never get to watch, so sad DVR. I'm like,